Hi, everybody. Thanks for tuning in and tuning up. This is Scott Jensen with my Ancient Wisdom Modern Health podcast. Here, I share and explain how to get and stay healthy with Tai Chi, Qigong, and Kung Fu, mixing interviews with incredible people and my own insights and experiences. We look for timeless wisdom and proven practices to be healthy and happy today. Today, I will continue discussing my inspirations and the San Francisco Bay Area scene from the first episode. Then I describe how my healing journey began. If you have not listened to the first episode, be sure to check it out. In the 1970s, the United States, there was plenty of violence. In comparison today, it's actually much safer in the United States. Although we're very concerned about gun violence in the particular times now, there were so many shootings in the 70s and in the 80s. I know the statistics in the 80s, for some years, more people died from gun violence in the United States than we had lost that in a comparative year in Vietnam, which is just amazing. There was a real threat in many cities, in many neighborhoods. They were much more dangerous than they are today. People were looking for real, viable self-defense alternatives. One of the things that I think inspired me and many of the other people in these early Kung Fu movies was that most of them, in one way or the other, were a hero's journey, where you had a younger or a weaker person who then studied Kung Fu from an old master, became stronger, and then became a hero who could defend his family and his friends, maybe bring some justice and harmony into the world where it was needed. This was a really inspiring thing for people, especially if you're one of the skinnier, weaker, less coordinated people. I didn't imagine myself being very strong or heroic. In my case, I had a lot of allergy attacks. My allergies would cause my eyes to swell and my nose to run, and this has made it very difficult to catch things like balls thrown in the air. I was a terrible athlete. The idea that I could learn martial arts and develop those qualities was really inspiring. I read about people like Teddy Roosevelt that had been weak, but then they decided to become strong and built up their strength. Another big inspiration for me, Jack LaLanne. Again, building up your strength systematically, that it could be done and that would really benefit me. Those were some inspirations that I had in the 1970s to begin learning traditional martial arts. Another big influence for everyone in my generation, including myself, were the early Bruce Lee movies, and particularly Enter the Dragon.
Or don't hit back.
I remember when Enter the Dragon came out, at first I wasn't allowed to watch it because I was too young. Eventually I got to see it. Back then, movies could run a lot longer at the movie theater. There wasn't a video cassette that you were going to get of Enter the Dragon, and theater runs were really long. Enter the Dragon was a huge hit. It stayed in theaters for months as people went and saw it over and over and over again. The notoriety of his death did help propel Enter the Dragon to become more of a hit. Lee's fierce stage presence really carried all of his films. And when I did decide that it was time to learn, I was in the right place. One of the best places in the entire United States if you wanted to learn any of the traditional Chinese martial arts. There were very few places in the United States where you could learn traditional Tai Chi from a real expert, or that you could learn Kung Fu from a classically trained, recognized expert in a well-known style. There were very few teachers of those calibers outside of the San Francisco Bay Area, the Los Angeles area, Seattle, New York, small groups in Texas and Florida. But if you weren't in one of those areas, most states didn't have a single qualified teacher of Tai Chi or Qigong or Kung Fu. They were very, very rare. One of the greatest things about learning Tai Chi is the fact that you can absolutely continue to practice Tai Chi as long as you can stand up. Tai Chi is designed to be a lifelong practice that you will never grow out of or become unable to do. This makes it even more worthwhile to invest your time and effort to learn Tai Chi. Although it does not take a lifetime to learn Tai Chi, you can enjoyably spend your entire life mastering the art and continuing to make progress and increase your skills even while you are getting older. The Healing and Longevity Path is specifically designed to meet the needs of older students who are beginning Tai Chi or people of all ages who are recovering from injuries or illnesses and those new to exercising. The Healing and Longevity Path includes a thorough system of balanced development exercises and an easy-to-follow pace with fewer movements and more encouragement. Learn more by going to 10,000victories.com. When I was 17 years old, I was driving a Volkswagen Bug in the rain, and I was a new driver. I was only 17. I was going downhill. At the bottom of the hill, there was a sharp turn to the left. I didn't realize that as I was coming down that hill in the rain that the entire turn was completely flooded. And when I hit it, my car spun out, it hydroplaned, and I spun around and around, went down the street. The driver's side door of my Bug landed on the corner of a Cadillac bumper. The bumper of the Cadillac basically crushed through the door and hit me in the pelvis, broke my pelvis in 5 places. My feet knocked the pedals off the floor, my seatbelt was snapped, and my hands twisted the steering wheel I was holding onto it. It was a severe impact. Fortunately, I was very close to the local police department and fire department. They actually heard the accident and sent the ambulance immediately. They didn't actually have to have a phone call. My heart stopped. I went code blue in the ambulance on the way to the hospital, and the paramedics using the early 1970s defibrillators were able to restart my heart. So after 3 days in the hospital, I woke up and my family was waiting, and I can't remember if my minister was at the bedside then or if he arrived shortly after to visit me. But I remember my minister gave me a big talk about that I was very lucky to be alive, that there must be something that I was supposed to do in my lifetime. God had sent me back to do it, so that maybe I should think about my good fortune and what I should do with my life deeply, since I'd been so fortunate to survive this terrible accident. And I did. It really made me reflect. When I'd had this accident and I broke my pelvis, I had already been studying Kempo karate with my father at a local school. When I got out of the hospital, the farthest forward that I could bend was to touch my knees, and that was very difficult. I could barely move my feet wider than shoulders width, just barely. Before I'd had the accident, I had been able to do the splits. Afterwards, I was a million miles from the splits. It took me many years of stretching and consistent effort to regain that flexibility. After I was released from the hospital, I had a long road to recovery with my pelvis. In addition to having scar tissue throughout my pelvis and hips, I also had damage to the base of my spine. My body was not flexible. To recover and develop my flexibility again, I just simply started stretching. Yoga wasn't so much of a thing back in the 70s, and I wasn't really attracted to the yoga that I saw. I got different books on stretching. I learned stretching from my teachers, and I learned the key to stretching was to focus on my breathing and using my breath to relax my muscles. The stretching period for me, I was mostly stretching my legs and my hips. I would spend an hour or two a day stretching. It really took me a minimum of an hour to feel like I had made any progress, or at least pushed myself to where I could go that day. And at the beginning, I was very stiff, so I wasn't going very far in any of the stretches, and I would just spend time in them and breathe, and very, very gradually, a tiny breath at a time, I would open my body up. There became a point where I really couldn't make progress with regular stretches anymore. Then I dialed back my stretching routine, started to do a lot more stance training, where I was holding the various stances that we do in Kung Fu or in Tai Chi, or moving very slowly through them by keeping my hips and lower back well aligned with good posture. I was able to get very deep stretches inside my pelvis and hips and throughout my legs and lower back as I was doing the movement slowly. This allowed me to break through the plateaus that I had reached in stretching. Later, I learned to combine the static stretching and the moving stretching. This process took me many years to regain the flexibility that I had. The first part of the 80s was a very intense martial arts training period for me, predominantly training with Peter Ralston and Wong Jackman. And throughout the 80s, I really focused on their traditional Kung Fu, particularly the Northern Shaolin style I was learning from Wong Jackman, the Xingyi Chan style, which is form and will boxing. I studied Tai Chi very intensively. I did a lot of fighting and matches and sparring, and I competed in a lot of tournaments. Then I had a second accident in 1986, which gave me a severe whiplash. From the top of my spine to the bottom, all of my vertebrae were misplaced. Basically, the entire spine was sprained and twisted. It was very painful and somewhat debilitating. From the outside, I looked just fine, but I was in a lot of pain. It was really difficult recovery. I couldn't do Tai Chi. Kung Fu was completely out of the question. I was basically at the phase of resting and rebuilding. In many ways, the spinal whiplash that I received was much harder for me to recover from than breaking my pelvis. Even though breaking my pelvis had technically sent me code blue and killed me, the whiplash over the years was a much tougher injury to heal. After that injury, most mornings I woke up in a lot of pain. It was the kind of pain that Tylenol and Advil and aspirin just didn't have any effect on. I had gotten chiropractic treatments and acupuncture, and they had been very effective in helping me after my first accident. I continued to get them after the whiplash, and I got more then, but it got to the point then where the chiropractic treatment really didn't reduce my pain, and the acupuncture treatment only helped for a little while. The simple fact of the matter is you just can't go to the chiropractor every day. You can't go to the acupuncturist every day. And as a young man, I couldn't afford to go to see them nearly as often as I might have liked in any case. So I needed to treat myself. I needed to use the knowledge and skills that I had and learn some more. The main practices that I did during this time to heal my spine were to do post-standing Qigong and to do the loosening tendons, opening joints exercises. I had learned a great variety of different stretching exercises and Qigong methods already. I could only do the most elementary and simple exercises because of the amount of pain that I was in. And the process with post-standing is the most boring possible exercise that you could imagine and to watch. Basically, you're standing with your feet shoulders apart. Your arms may be up or they might be resting against your sides or on your thighs, and you don't move. You breathe. And as you stand, you try to have the best posture that you can, lifting your head, balancing it, opening your back, having good posture, and then you let your body adjust to the good posture. For years, I had to do this every morning. That's what it took for me to have a good day. And what was happening was my joints, my bones were sort of collapsing and then pinching my nerves. Nerves only need a tiny pinch to really hurt. Also, they only need a little bit of opening sometimes to relieve that pain. But if you have a lot of muscular cramping, scar tissue, and inflammation, it can be very difficult to achieve that goal of opening up the joints and relieving the pinched nerves. Gradually, I got much stronger, and I didn't require as long to be aligned or to realign my body, and I could do it much quicker. Then I was able to expand my practice to doing my Tai Chi forms. From there to return to doing the very aggressive and athletic Kung Fu that I had done. That concludes today's episode. If you have questions, please send them to practice@10,000victories.com. Please remember to subscribe and share. Until our next episode, when I discuss learning Qigong in the martial world and the deep connections between traditional Chinese medicine and martial arts. Be well and stay happy.